Hi, everyone. My name is Leigh Ioffe. I'm the founder and director of The Long Short Road. The Long Short Road is a nonprofit organization that was founded in 2019 to help foster resilience in the world through suicide prevention and mental wellness education. Our reach is global. We support everyone from all ages and stages of life, from teenagers to mental health professionals and everyone in between, with crisis management services and programs that help foster resilience through holistic mental wellness, including art and writing. It is my great honor and pleasure to now present to you the full conversation that I had with Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson on suicide prevention, mental wellness, and doing the inner work to help heal the world. Enjoy. Okay. My guest today is Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson. Rabbi Jacobson is one of the most sought after speakers in the Jewish world today and a mentor to many thousands across the globe. He has traveled to hundreds of communities in 6 continents, educating and inspiring people of all backgrounds with the depth of Torah and Judaism. Rabbi Jacobson was the first rabbi to ever be invited by the Pentagon to deliver the religious keynote to the U.S. military chief of chaplains and to the National Security Agency. Rabbi Jacobson, thank you for being here and welcome.
Thank you so much for the opportunity and the privilege and the invitation. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. So, as someone who really has seen it all in terms of where the Jewish world is holding today, from your perspective, well, I guess actually before I ask the question, I'll preface by saying that we're having this conversation as of the time that we are having this conversation, there were unfortunately over 10 confirmed suicides in the Jewish community around the United States. And that we're in a level of crisis that feels unprecedented. I know that word is overused these days, but it feels unprecedented. From your perspective, what would you say are the biggest challenges that we're facing in the Jewish community today?
So I want to answer the question, but I would like to hear, before I answer this question, I would like to hear from you as somebody who's been dealing for a very, very long time with the suicide, I don't know what to call it, the suicide plague, malady, tragedy, crisis that we have been dealing with for years in our community. Sometimes more exposed, sometimes less exposed. Some families have hidden it. They don't want people to know because of the family reputation. So I would like to hear from you, as somebody with boots on the ground and really in the field and I would say on the front lines in terms of your work and the programs and the initiatives that you created and the education of the public. I really want to hear from you what you're seeing and what you're experiencing and what your feedback is. And if you could speak to 16 million Jews today, and you could speak to all of the communities, men, women, children, teenagers, young men, young women, parents, young parents, older parents, what would you tell them from your hands-on experience?
Oh,
Then and then I'll give you
I
my
didn't expect
commentary.
that, but I appreciate that you're turning the question on me.
No, and then I'll give you my comment. It's not to avoid. I just want to.
No.
The reason is because since you this is your specific field of work.
Yeah,
You have sometimes a general practitioner who can give
sure,
a general perspective,
sure.
but sometimes you want to tune into the person, the cardiologist who's dealing with the heart all
Right,
day and all night. So that's
right.
why I feel it'll just be a much more informed and enlightened response.
I appreciate that.
I can hear
So,
from you.
so I'll tell you, in terms of suicide, I think what we're seeing, and again, I use that word unprecedented, and I don't like to use that word because it got so overused during COVID. But I do think that we're seeing something happening now in the frum community. I don't actually, I mean, I know that suicide has always been an issue that we've struggled with. I don't know that it's actually ever been this bad. When I got started a decade ago, I don't remember hearing about so many numbers in such a short amount of time. And what's been happening in the last 8 or 9 weeks is unfortunately not new. Um, I've been seeing patterns like this already for a year or two. Um, I think that, well, I know from the research, but also from lived experience, that suicide is a symptom of underlying causes. It's not who the person is. It's not their identity. It's not, oh, this person is suicidal. They're a problem. They're unfixable. Underneath that, underneath that psych ache, that's the psychological term that's used, is a host of challenges that are leading the person to feel I can't go on with my life in this way. And their perspective is very narrowed on, I have to look for a solution to end my pain, and this is the solution. It will be better for everyone if I'm not here. Whether or not that's actually true, and most often it's not true, to a person who's struggling with suicide, they're not able to think logically and rationally. And I think if I could speak to to everyone, and I do speak to people from all ages and all stages of life, it's a twofold answer that I would say. One, we do have a very big problem on our hands. And the second thing is, though, is that I do have hope. And I do know that it's possible for people with even chronic suicidal ideation and behavior to heal and to live meaningful, healthy, strong lives. Um, but I think that this issue is so misunderstood, and more than depression, more than anxiety, more than trauma, because we're talking about all that stuff now, I think. I
So
mean,
what's the main issue that's misunderstood? Could you pinpoint what is
suicide.
misunderstood?
That I think that when people hear the word suicide, they panic. Oh my God, this person is a liability. Oh my gosh, this person's gonna do something. They're gonna hurt themselves, or they're gonna try to hurt me, or they're out of their minds, they're not in their bodies, they're crazy. That's where we tend to go. And I think we're much more understanding of people who struggle with depression or who have post-trauma, but then you add in suicide as a factor of the equation, and then it's hands off, even with mental health professionals. I've been in this field for a decade. It's very hard to find mental health professionals that will take on a patient who openly acknowledges suicidal ideation because of the legal liability. So you have hundreds of people walking around with this issue, and the professionals who are supposed to help them are scared to. And I've heard this from their mouths.
And what's your message to them? What's your message to all these mental health professionals and all members of our community when they hear or see a suicide potential?
Stop being afraid of people. We all know pain. We all know what it's like to feel pain. We
Mm.
all know what it's like to be in so much pain that we will do anything to get out of it, even things that are extreme and make no sense logically. And, connection is the gateway to healing. And when people feel stigmatized and they feel othered, right, we're creating an us versus them mentality. It drives to separate us in a way that makes healing almost impossible.
Wow, powerful. I want to ask you two questions. Number one, in the recent suicides that have become frequently much more often, are you seeing a certain age, demographic, or anything specific in which you can categorize it, or no? It's just,
No, that's
no.
when I got started, it was mostly what I was aware of was teenagers because that was the demographic I was working with. And then as my view expanded and I started getting trained, this is not an issue that discriminates. Meaning, there are some populations that are at higher risk than others, but that's not to say that, adult men don't struggle with this issue. Suicide is I think the fourth leading cause of death in adult men ages 30 to 60. Like that's my age group. I'm in my 30s. That's people that daven next to my husband in shul. And it's also teenagers and it's also older men. Um, and we've seen it. I mean, the recent suicides that I was aware of were Muncie, Borough Park, Lakewood, Chicago, Miami, Texas, Los Angeles. And it's everyone from Reform to ultra Orthodox. It's not a discriminatory issue.
And males and females also?
Actually, with this most recent um challenges, it's been mostly men, which is also congruent with the research. That's what from the statistics, that's what we know, that men are more likely to die. They're not more likely to attempt, but they are more likely to die by suicide than women. Partially because the shame for men, the masculinity thing, oh, I'm so weak, I couldn't even finish the job, so to speak. Chas v'chalila, we should never. So they feel like they have to go all the way because the shame of the other side of
Can you, right, I get it. Can you describe to us what is the nature of the pain that leads somebody not just to think of suicide or ponder it, but actually execute it? In other words, we all have pain.
right,
We all know people that have mental illness.
right,
We all know people, sometimes ourselves or others around us, children, friends, neighbors, relatives, siblings, who struggle deeply
right,
with all different types of internal anxiety, stress, and fear, overwhelming emotions.
Yeah.
What is the border that one crosses experientially and energetically from the point of saying, I am miserable. I hate my life.
Yeah.
God, why did you pick on me? I hate Pesach. I hate my parents. I hate my spouse. I hate. I'm done. I'm finished. This is sick. I am miserable. From that point, crossing the border of saying, it's time to terminate my life. Can you take me
Yeah.
as much as possible? Give me
Sure.
a tour of that emotional shift.
Sure. I think for every it's a great question. It's also such a nuanced response because for every person it's so different. One of the main factors that I have seen is what keeps people from crossing that line is a sense of connection, having, and it doesn't necessarily have to mean family. I've worked with hundreds of people who have literally no one to turn to, right? Their parents are alive for all intents and purposes. This person is an orphan, right? No one to turn to, and still there is a sense of hopefulness that keeps them going. Sometimes that hopefulness is so deep down buried inside they don't even recognize it's there. But there's almost it's like a sense it's a dance, it's like a sense of ambivalence. I don't want to die, but I want this pain to end, and they kind of oscillate between the two. I think for every person it's so different. It could be something that triggers them. They're leading up with hope for something, 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 and then the thing that they're hoping for doesn't happen. um, or, it could be something as extreme as a marriage ending or a breakup or even a breakup between friends, right? I've worked with young people that the thing that pushed them over the line was that their friends ended, young girls, high school girls, yeshiva bachrim, whose friends couldn't handle it and couldn't handle their intensity anymore from how much help was needed, that they pushed them away. And that was the driving factor to lead them over the edge. But for every person, it's so, you know, one of the ways that we describe it is that a person who's struggling with suicidal ideation kind of gets this feeling of tunnel vision, where it's almost like they have binoculars glued to their eyes. And it's very difficult for them to take perspective of what's happening outside of this view that they have. And so for people who on the side of the line of I'm miserable, but I don't want to die, I have the capacity to get to my prefrontal cortex and take the binoculars down from time to time. Doesn't mean that I'm always able to access that part of myself, but I can take the binoculars off and from time to time see that there's more going on than that could contribute to my healing and not just my pain. For many people though, right, that ability to get to here and to get to that, part of themselves that's able to think rationally and logically gets tipped over the edge by something, and it could be very small. Um, but that's also why it's so imperative that as a community we have the resources and the ability to help people who are struggling, because I've seen firsthand how one conversation makes the difference between life and death.
So, what would you suggest if somebody comes in to shul or to a house, tells a friend, a parent, a sibling, a neighbor, a random person, I want to kill myself? A mental health professional they may share it with. You
First,
said one conversation could make the difference. What would that conversation look like that could make the difference?
the conversation has to be like immersed, like bathed in compassion. And judgment has to have no place in this.
Yeah.
Just like, you know. So the thing I tell people is if you receive a disclosure, the first thing you do is take a very deep, nourishing breath and ground yourself so that you do not panic. Will you maybe panic? Maybe you'll be overwhelmed. Okay. But have the wherewithal to have a human to human, heart to heart conversation with the person and not immediately, oh my God, what am I going to do? Thank them for sharing. Thank you for telling me. I can't imagine how scary that was for you to open up to me. Because sometimes, and I've seen this, someone, let's say a man walking into shul, he will have already disclosed to three or four people that he was struggling, and those people shut him down already. So he's coming to you and saying, this is my last chance. I'm asking this person, if they shut me down, that is proof that I should not be here. And when you can say to that person, I know that was really scary. I can't imagine how much courage that took to tell me. Thank you. and I want to hear more about what's going on and create a sense of safety where, you know, it's almost like I've heard different therapists use this, and I like to use this also. It's almost like we're letting them borrow our nervous system.
We're letting them what?
We're letting them borrow our nervous system,
Borrow our nervous system. That's a
right?
beautiful line.
Like they're so
They call it
dysregulated.
co-regulation.
But in a way, if when a person is dysregulated, right, Rabbi, you know, when a kid is, I mean, to take it a different direction, when a child is having a tantrum, they're not hearing, why are you crying? Why are you upset? How can I help you? Let me get you an ice cream. All they hear is more noise, chaos. So when a person is about to make a disclosure of suicide, and by the way, it's usually not so straightforward that they say, help,
Right,
I'm thinking about
right,
killing myself, help me
right,
not, right?
right.
It's usually like they're kind of dancing around the issue and they're almost waiting for us to be compassionate enough to say, hey, I noticed you're not doing
Yeah.
so
It's
great.
like a girl I know, her mother was in the middle of a conversation at the Shabbos table with some adults. She's a teenager. And, the mother stopped the conversation because the girl came in and she's like, random. Matter of fact, she's like, you don't have to be afraid to talk about suicide. In front of me, I tried cutting myself 5 times.
Wow,
You
wow.
know, boom.
Oh my gosh. See, if only like I'll that everyone should be that straightforward, but most often they're not. You know,
Right, right. And I think that I would like to zoom into one point you made. We often don't realize that our deepest work in helping other people who are at the brink of suicide and at the brink of really at the brink of complete disaster and despair is really our own internal work.
yeah,
That's really where it's at.
yeah,
We often point fingers like you're too crazy for me to deal with you. Like go to a professional. I wasn't trained for this, which is essentially reinforcing their internal sense
yeah,
of despair
yeah,
and their internal sense that nothing and nobody can help me. Here is a calm person who even I manage to trigger and unend their own nervous system. So
right.
it's such deep internal work of being fully present with yourself, like watching what just happened to you,
Yeah,
how dysregulated did I just become from what I just heard?
yeah,
And can I actually display to the person a sense that I'm not afraid of them?
right.
Because if they feel that I need to run away emotionally and detach and go offline because of them, it means that even the most normal people are completely rattled and destroyed from me. So it means I'm really a basket case. I am truly a loser. I am truly a curse to civilization and to society. I was actually talking today to a non-Jewish therapist in England, a female Jewish, not a non-Jewish female therapist in England, who's had a lot of success in a certain field of work, and healing some severe trauma. And this person was telling me about a boy that she knows who suffers from psychosis, like serious psychosis, a mental illness. And she was saying how when this boy displays psychosis towards friends or towards parents or towards siblings, in many ways, subconsciously, he's testing them
Yeah,
to see if they are afraid of his psychosis because he is frightened of himself, which is why he completely fragmented his personality. And she said the most important thing for his parents and people close to him do is not run away emotionally
yeah,
when he breaks down to say, I'm not afraid of your psychosis. I'm not afraid of you.
yeah.
I'm fully present. The inner work that requires is very profound.
Oh
You
yeah.
can't fake it. You can't fake it. It's not about lies. It's not about saying the right thing. It's an inner, energetic vibe
Yeah.
and frequency that the other person is going to
Well,
experience.
because they're going to pick up on it,
Right.
right? I often tell people if, and this is, I say the same thing to everything, to parents, to educators, to therapists, to high school students, to rabbis. This person is, this is John Gottman's phrase. It's a bid for connection.
Yeah.
Their behavior is communication. They are communicating something to you and they're trying to connect with you and see, is my invitation going to be accepted?
Right.
Is this person going to see me as a
Right.
whole person,
Right.
as a chelek elokami mamish that is going through, a very challenging human experience that
Beautiful line. Is this person
is
going to see me as a chelik elakami mal mamash, or they're also going to have to run away from me?
right? And it's, and I look, I'm going to be honest. When I got started in suicide prevention, I was terrified. The first person who disclosed suicidal ideation to me, I managed to somehow hold it together, and I was with this person for almost 8 hours. And on the inside, I was like, what in the world, Hashem? What am I supposed to do? Why did you send me here? What does this person want from me? I can't help. I'm not a professional. I went through all the motions that now I help support people not to go through. It's a very human
It is. It's
reaction to
very,
something so, right? So we also have to be empathetic to the people who might freak
of
out,
course, of course.
right?
Not only we have to be empathetic, it's I think even more than that. If I am afraid of my own emotions and my own challenging and difficult moments, how in the world am I supposed to co-regulate
Yeah.
a person who's literally at the brink of the abyss?
Yeah.
The fact that I am so afraid of his or her emotions is because that's how I dealt with my own emotions. I
Right.
was afraid of feeling what I'm feeling. So I learned to either repress it, suppress it, bury it, deny it,
Right.
divert my attention from it, find a cute or interesting, charming distraction. And I brilliantly, I mean, each of us in our own way, we created the coping mechanisms of avoiding,
Right.
those highways, those neural highways, those neural pathways where there is a lot of toxicity, just like when you're driving, on your GPS, your Google map says there's a crazy accident there, there's a ditch there, there's a police, whatever it is, there's traffic, take another highway. So, those neural pathways that bring us into messy places, we often avoid at all costs, and we do it very brilliantly. Some of us do it by becoming celebrities, and some of us doing it by working, 17 hours a day, and some of us do it by becoming big tzaddikim, and some of us do it, whatever we do. This one is binging, and this one is drinking, and this one is distracting themselves by being the greatest mother who ever lived, or the greatest rabbi or father who ever lived. And now suddenly my own child or a friend's child or a student comes to me and reveals such disturbing emotions. My instinctive, I would say, cellular reaction, my biological reaction, it's not even thinking. It's like somebody said, it's not my psychology that's blocking me, it's my biology. It's not even a thought process. My entire body is now uptight and afraid. And the only message I can do is try to convince this person out of their thoughts. I'm gonna convince you. I'm gonna prove it to you. I'm gonna pressure you with believing that you have to stop thinking this way. And I really believe that through my lecture, my brilliant lecture, and my preaching to you, you will forever eliminate these crazy, disastrous, disgusting thoughts out of your brain. And in around 1 hour, you'll become one of the most happiest people that ever lived, because I gave you such a brilliant, brilliant, beautiful lecture on how you have to be happy and
Yep.
you shouldn't think this way. And that's exactly what you needed to hear.
Yep. I had experiences with post-trauma in my early 20s, and I remember someone saying to me, but look at all the positive things. Look at I went through a marriage in my 20s that ended, and it was very challenging, and there was a lot of stuff to pick up. And someone said, but at least you got your get. At least you didn't have, right, going on a list of here's all the reasons you should be happy. So why are you like lying in bed crying all day? And I looked at her sarcastically and I was like, you know what? You're right. I should just, you know what? We're closing the lid is on the box. We're moving on. Goodbye. It doesn't work that way. And again, it goes back to the nervous system. A dysregulated nervous system that doesn't have space to just be is not a nervous system that's going to say, okay, cool, I can heal now. Right? It's just looking for something to help keep them, safe and I think people in pain just in that level of pain just want to be seen, right? They don't want fix-its. They don't want a lecture.
Everybody needs to be seen. We all need to be seen, and people in pain are often just yearning to be seen. And you know what? You can't see others if nobody ever saw you, and
Right,
you never saw yourself.
right,
I would say it's one of the deepest gifts you can give a person in life is to see them. Not to see them for who you want them to be, not to see them for something you want them to do, not to see them because of the way you understand what their contribution to the world is, but really
right.
to just see them, really, really see them. And
Yeah,
you know what? Some of us feel even guilty asking for it. We don't know that we deserve and are allowed to be seen.
yeah.
There is a mitzvah in the Torah that 3 times a year, Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot, yeah, Shalosh Pam Bashana, Yira Kol Zchurcha Es Pnei Adon Hashem. Every Jew should come up to the Beis Hamikdash It says Yirah, to be seen by God.
Wow.
And the Gemara says, Kashem Shabalirois, Kach Baleirois. Just like you're coming to see, you're coming to be seen. So it's almost a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to come to be seen. It's like a divine commandment that God says, I want to be able to see you in a way that you should know that you're coming to be seen.
Wow.
And I never really understood it. Like, what? Like, no, it's almost like there's a focus. Like, there's a time you're coming to be seen. And it's like a mitzvah.
Wow. That's like so profound.
Yeah.
It's,
And you know what? It's interesting. I'm just thinking about it. It's a mitzvah on the males. It's a mitzvah on the males. And I'm realizing that you spoke about, male suicide versus female suicide. I'm thinking because I guess it's really this profound idea that the female has to be able to find herself and see God inside of herself.
right,
And the male has to go to the Beis Hamikdash, and God says, I'm going to see you there.
right,
It's like the male-female dynamic. If I find God inside of myself, or I find God as an authority above myself. The male wears a
right,
yarmulke, it's above me, and gets an aliyah, you're going up to the Torah, whatever, all these different types of things. But the point here is that being seen is the gift of a lifetime, or as you would say, an unprecedented gift,
right,
using the word unprecedented, which allows me to see others. But how can I see anybody if nobody ever saw me and I never saw myself? I don't even know what it means.
right,
All I can do is try to control you and make sure you're in a safe spot where you're not thinking crazy things.
right. You know, for most of the decade that I've been doing suicide prevention, this pattern has emerged over and over again, especially with working with teens and their parents, which is a bulk of my work is doing crisis management with teens in distress and then helping the family, right, navigate the mental health. Like, why would you ever have to know about the best insurance for a residential treatment center? And right, like, why would you ever have to know about these things until Chas v'shalom, your child, Lo Aleinu, was hospitalized for a suicide attempt? And again and again and again, over and over again, to the point that we created within the organization an entire umbrella just dedicated to this, is that I noticed that when I would speak to parents, they were very fixated on how am I fixing my child? How are we doing this fast enough so we can get back to normal and look like the normal family on the street that we've always been? And right, so this doesn't impact shidduchim and it doesn't impact the schools they get into, and we can keep our standing in society. Da 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 da. How fast is this going to go? And when I tell them there's no such thing, and this is going to be the journey it's going to be, and also as the parent, what kind of tools do you have to help yourself and your child? Oh no, I don't need help. It's not me. I, this child is the black sheep of my family. We're fine. And then upon further investigation, upon further work, you realize there's so much work to be done. And for parents, Chas v'shalom, I don't want to say that your child having a mental health challenge or suicidal ideation is a gift, but in many ways, our children alert us to the healing that needs to be happening all around, not just with them. And for many parents, the journey becomes not only how do I support my child, but how do I also go back and give myself and kind of establish the roots of my needs that were never met, that I were never met for me when I was a child or when I was a teen. Um, it's very profound work to, recognize that the only thing
Extremely profound, very, very vulnerable,
yeah.
extremely humbling. And as I once heard from a mentor of mine, we sometimes, actually, I heard this from my wife, who's a mentor of mine. She sent me a recording of a Tanya class that she gave to women in Muncie. She gives a class, and she said something so beautiful and profound. So I'm going to quote her. The wind beneath my wings. She said that parents think they were sent down to the world to heal their children. Sooner or later, we often come to realize, if we're vulnerable and honest enough, that it's often our children who sacrificed their lives to come down to this world to heal us. You know,
Well,
we sometimes think we're here, to help our kids. They're actually, each one of our children, if we allow them the work, they are here to crack us open.
yeah,
And one day we have to be so grateful to them because they endured so much pain
yeah.
and anguish and anxiety in this spiritual divine mission to crack open their parents. And fortunate are the parents who have the humility and the vulnerability and say, wow, thank you for the gift.
Mm,
Thank you for cracking me open. I said the other day in a class, I once saw this a few years ago, and I loved it. He said, on Pesach, we like hide the afikomen, and then we have this custom where the children, find it,
I did.
and then they want a prize if they give it back to us. And what's the idea behind this? I said, we all have broken matzahs, broken parts of our life that we hide. As parents, we hide them very, very well. And there's a very profound message here. Whatever we hide, our children are going to
Yeah.
reveal, and they're going to give it back to us.
Yeah.
And when they give it to us, we have an option. We can either get upset at them and say, how dare you destroy the beautiful reputation of our family? Or we could look at them, shed a tear, and say, thank you. Thank you for allowing us the gift of healing that which has to be healed. And only then, when we embrace the Afikaiman with presence and with serenity and with gratitude, can we complete our Seder and say, Lashana Haba B'Yerushalayim, can we actually achieve redemption? So I think I have a mentor who once shared with me and said, our children are the manifestation of the fragmented parts of our personalities, the parts of the parents that we have not made peace with,
Ooh.
the parts inside of us that are so fragmented and chaotic, and we're embarrassed of them and we never dealt with them. Our children manifest those parts in their lives. Instead of pointing a finger at them, we should go inward and ask ourselves, what parts of ourselves are they manifesting? And when we begin to heal those parts energetically and automatically, they're like, okay, we don't have to manifest that anymore.
Right.
So we're busy talking about, the illnesses of our kids, of how crazy they are, weird, insane, mashiga. We blame a lot of things, and a lot of things can use correction. I mean, addiction to technology and hours and screens is not a good thing.
Yeah.
And we all need to heal ourselves and our homes in that area, no question.
Yeah.
But a huge part of it has to do not with an objective reality outside of ourselves. They're literally manifesting our own deep, deep insanity that we did not deal with. And we have repressed it for 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 40, 30, 20, 10 years, whatever it is. And they're literally manifesting it to us. They're literally revealing our Afikaiman. In the Haggadah, the Afikaiman is called Safon, which means hidden. It's the parts of our brokenness that we hid away maybe for generations. It's not anybody's fault.
Right.
And they're manifesting it, and they're triggering us so deeply. You know why? Because they're holding up a mirror to who we really are.
Yeah.
And we have not acknowledged it, and we have not dealt with it. And when we're ready to deal with it, they start manifesting their true light.
Right. Right.
I mean, I have found this as a parent and as a human being and as a teacher to many and as a mentor. I have found this truth to be a life-changing, incredibly powerful truth.
Yeah.
And it always is about going back inward. The Baal Shem Tov said that every person is a mirror. What you're seeing is a reflection of you.
Yeah.
And the question is, come on, that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
That's not true. Sometimes I look at a person and I could say, they're depressed, they're broken, they're anxious. They have a lot of issues. They need healing, they need help. They're immoral, they're crazy, they're addicted, whatever it is. Like the Baal Shem Tov didn't know that?
Mm-hmm.
Really, everybody is a mirror? And I think one of the main messages of the Baal Shem Tov is what you're often seeing, and the way you're seeing it and the way you're triggered by it has nothing to do with the objective reality.
Right.
Of course, they may be struggling with something very, very deep. But the Baal Shem Tov says the way you're reacting, what you're seeing here is always a reflection of the work you did inside of yourself. How regulated are you? How present are you? How much fear or lack of it do you carry? That's always about you. Always, always. Your husband just said something. Your wife just said something. You were triggered. You were literally triggered to the point of a breakdown. And nobody knows it, but you know it because you're about to implode. That has very little to do with what your wife said.
Right.
It has everything to do with what you heard and what your nervous system experienced when you heard those words, which triggered your nervous system into a space of fight or flight or freeze or fawn.
Right.
And when I can go there and I can observe all of this, it's not about blame, it's not about judgment. When I can observe this as a spectator and remain present, wow, that's powerful.
Yeah. And then
I want to ask you, you
Yeah.
spoke about your own trauma and how somebody came to you and said, But look at this, you got to get, and you have this, and you have that, and you have that. And you're like sarcastically, yeah, sure, let me snap my fingers and just start dancing, and my trauma is gone. And you were basically intimating how absurd that was and how that person completely lacked any basic understanding of how trauma works,
Right,
how it paralyzes us. If our nervous system is not giving the permission to be and to feel and to experience, it could never heal
right,
because it remains trapped in this crazy uptightness that it has to protect.
right,
And it's literally a physiological reality that anybody who has done this work emotionally and energetically knows.
right.
So now I want to ask you another question, if I may.
Sure.
What did help you get out of your trauma?
Oh.
I know not that person who said,
No,
come on, don't be a loser, get out of bed and just get
yeah,
a life.
I think
So
it
what did help you?
I think it was first and foremost the people who gave me permission to just be in the mess, right? And it's interesting, my Baruch Hashem, I'm married now for 7.5 years. We have 3 kids. Like, I've done that work and we're on our journey together. And it's interesting that my husband and I were talking about this just recently, that it was in our marriage that I felt most safe to, in some ways, fall apart and deal with the stuff that had happened the first time around. Because up until I had that safety, it was very much like, okay, I just have to keep myself in line and I just have to keep going, and no one can know how broken I feel and no one can know how
Mm,
intense my depression anxiety is,
mm,
because I'm helping so many people that I have to hold it together, and all this stuff. It's interesting. I was having a conversation with someone once and I told them, I started doing suicide prevention a year after my first marriage ended. And he went, ah, you found an escape route to not have to deal with your problems. I'm like, ain't that the truth? But I think having people in my life who helped me feel safe to be seen and to fall apart and to be angry at Hashem and know that Hashem can handle my anger, right? So many people were like, why? Hashgacha pratis, gamzu latova, Hashem did this for a good reason. I was like, I don't want to hear that. Please don't tell me that. It doesn't feel good, right? All of those things could be true, but there's a time and a place, right? I think giving myself permission to go inside and really investigate with compassion what was happening inside of myself, and not labeling myself as a broken person, not labeling myself as someone who couldn't heal, because for many years that was my ideology. Everyone else can heal, I can help everybody, but I'm the broken one, I'm the mistake. Hashem sent everybody here on purpose, and it's just a matter of time before he realizes, like, oops, you know, mislabeled, let's be done. I think, but it really goes back to that foundational feeling of connection. And it's interesting, when you were saying before about parents doing their work, one of the things that came up for me is this idea in attachment. In attachment theory, we talk about earned security, right? That there's secure attachment, non-secure attachment, and then there's all the sub levels of non-secure attachment, and that many people, adults, are walking around with nervous systems that didn't receive the proper type of attachment that would help them feel secure in the world, and that through doing their own work and avoda, they can earn security themselves. They're not necessarily getting it from their parents. Maybe their parents aren't alive anymore, right? But they can get it from within. And I think when I learned that, that was a game changer for me. But it had to start with having people who felt safe and learning how to feel safe in my own body. Um, which, you know, through somatic practices, through plant medicine, through therapy, through having, actually one of the most interesting things is that the thing that has one of the most profound gifts that I have received in my life is teaching others, because I learn more from them every day than they learn from me. And we run a trauma-informed expressive writing classes. We do narrative integration and writing about our stories so we can change our stories. I went into that to help women who were dealing with severe trauma heal, and I had already done it. So I said, okay, this isn't about me, it's about them. The level of healing that I gain from being with these women every week, and I tell them all the time, I'm like, you guys think you're here for yourselves. You're healing me. You don't even realize what you're doing for me. um, but I think, and every person also has to find their own avenue to heal. What works for me is not necessarily going to work for another person.
wow. I would want to clarify just one point. I think it's
Sure.
just important because people can wonder and maybe question, some of the ideas being conveyed here. Some people almost feel that this approach you're advocating is antithetical to the idea of Hashgacha Pratis, by divine providence. Because like what you were saying is that people are telling you, Everything that happened to you is hashgacha pratis. It's by divine providence. Gamzu l'taiva. God runs this world. He orchestrates everything that happens in this world, including things that are difficult and challenging. And the moment you can accept that and embrace that and trust Him, you could just snap out of your, craziness and trauma and just start celebrating life and be in a good mood.
And Hashgacha Pratis is obviously true, right? I believe
But
that.
but, but I want to
I,
clarify one thing.
sure.
Hashgacha pratis includes the fact that my nervous system has been shattered. That's also Hashgacha pratis.
Mm,
So looking at my nervous system is part of studying the divine providence.
yeah,
In other words, what I'm feeling right now, what my body has experienced, is part of the divine providence. So
right,
God is present in that. So by denying my feelings, by denying my emotions, by denying my energetic experience, I'm actually amputating part of God's plan. I'm
right,
actually telling God, oh, I'm not ready to believe that you're also present in my emotions.
right,
You're only present in intellectual analysis of what emotions are supposed to look like.
right,
Can we actually experience God in the emotion itself? Trusting that whatever my nervous system went through, that is part of the divine providence, and paying tribute to that,
yeah.
embracing that with empathy and compassion is actually embracing divine providence.
Wow.
You
That
get what I'm saying?
yes. And
Yeah.
that's a very
When
and
when David HaMelech, when David HaMelech, King David says in chapter 23 of Psalms of Tehillim, Gam ki elech begeit salmovis lo ira raki ate madi. I walk in the valley of the shadow of death. I walk through it,
yeah.
and I'm not paralyzed by fear because you're with me.
Mm,
So we often intellectualize that. Oh, it's not really the valley of the shadow of death because you're with me. That's not what he's saying.
right,
Not what he's saying. In
right,
Psalms 139, he says, I go up to the heavens and you're there. And then I go down into the abyss, and here you are.
right.
You hold my hand. Even in the darkness, you're there. What does that mean energetically? Energetically means he's not denying the experience. It's a very, very deep experience of what I'm feeling. And somehow behind that darkness lay the gems of your light. So don't be afraid of that.
Right.
And I think that little piece is often misconstrued because we need role models to teach it to us. I could read the same verse. I could give the same lecture on Hashgacha Pratis. Somebody who did this work will radiate a different energy than somebody who didn't do the work. For somebody, it just means stop feeling.
Right.
Stop feeling. It's Hashgacha Pratis. Hashgacha Pratis is an excuse and a crutch of avoiding. It's a
100.
way of avoiding. And I get it. I'm not judging. In fact, I used to be there.
You and me both, trust me.
Yeah. I used to be there. It was a way of overriding the system in the name of Hashgacha Pratis. The whole
Right,
idea of Hashgacha Pratis means you don't have to override because God is here. Don't override. You
right,
understand? We use Hashgacha Pratis not to believe in Hashgacha Pratis. Hashgacha Pratis until it comes to your nervous system.
right, right.
Sorry, that's a mistake. That's your mishagas. Get out of it. Snap your finger. Oh, no, that's not Hashgacha Pratis.
Come on. Yeah, no, it's almost like
Because
we
because Judaism is philosophical, it's not embodied. When Hashgacha Pratis is here, it's brainy.
right,
So then it's just a brain idea. Hashgacha Pratis, sure. When it's embodied, it means God is not afraid of your darkness. In fact, deep down inside your darkness, you're going to find your deepest light.
right. Yeah. And I to that point, um, someone who I supported during a suicide intervention at a very, very, very low point in their life. They were college age, and the idea of even living for the next 2 hours, let alone, another week, was just wasn't even registering to them. This is not happening, right? Um, they're now a medical professional. They're now a psychiatrist.
Wow.
And it, I often tell people that I wish that I hadn't gone through all of the negative experiences that I had because they were really painful and I felt very alone. And it did feel at times, if I'm honest, that like Hashem kind of forgot that I'm around. But I think that that also gives me the ability to channel that energy now into help, over 1,000 crisis interventions later, like I don't think I would be able to do that if I didn't know what this level of pain felt like.
And you know what empathy means.
Right.
You can feel what they're going through.
Right. It's very, you know, and I just, part of me wonders, like, how can we, like, I don't know if this is the right way of asking this question, but how can we wake people up? I think, and this is within your work, I know and I can imagine that you have spoken to literally thousands of people, and that, in recent years, I mean, you, the topic of mental health has become so prominent. It's something that you address all the time in your classes, in your lectures. Your weekly women's class is a staple in my house. Your Tuesday class. how can how is it possible? Like, we've done so much right, I think, as a community. We're talking about this, we're embracing these issues. People are going to therapy, people are getting help, they're embracing the messiness of being human, they're acknowledging, but, like, what's it gonna take? I mean, over 10 suicides in 9 weeks. What's it gonna take to wait? Like, how could we shake people out of this staunchness of, like, no, we have to stay up here intellectual and not embody our reality of, we are neshamas and bodies, and our bodies and our neshamas are going through very intense crises. What's it going to take to get people to realize, like, oh, this is actually a real issue in our community and we can't ignore it anymore? I don't know. That's a tall order, but I figured I'd put it out there.
Powerful, powerful question. And the last words of Adon Olam that so many of us say every day and on Shabbos, B'yadei afkid ruchi be'es ishan v'a'ira v'im ruchi gviyasi Hashem li v'la'ira. So we know the words in Hebrew, but the English translation of these words really drives home the potency of these words. What we're basically saying, when I go to sleep, be'es ishan, I give him my spirit. I deposit my spirit in God's hands because I'm going to sleep. It's a reduced level of consciousness. And then I wake up, va'ira. And as ruchi is gviyasi, as my spirit comes into my gviya, which means it's embodied in my nervous system, in my physical body, God is with me and I'm not afraid.
Mm,
It's almost indicating that it's only when we embody things that we can liberate ourselves from fear.
right.
When things are not embodied, we get so stuck.
Yeah.
So we say it actually every morning in Adon Olam. To answer your question directly, I'm compelled to give all these different types of answers, but I think probably the most authentic and real answer is that the same message that we're preaching to everybody else, we should be preaching to ourselves right now.
Yeah.
And that is, I think the answer to your question must go inward. I have to go inward. I think all of us have to go inward and ask myself, what is it that inside of me still needs to be healed? That after all my lectures and all my presentations and all the podcasts and all the WhatsApps and all the clips and all the good things that happened, there is still so much resistance. So I could point fingers and say, yeah, you're sick, you're sick, you're sick. Everybody is sick, and I'm the only healthy guy walking the face of this planet. But that's another form of illness.
Right.
And really just really going inward and asking, what can we heal? What can I heal? And I have a lot to heal. I don't even have this question. I'm saying it in humor because I have a lot to heal. I have a lot to heal. Because I think, I really think that, it's back to the Baal Shem Tov, it's a mirror. It's just a mirror for each of us
Yeah.
to really say, where am I getting stuck? Because when I heal my triggers, when I heal my trauma, that energy heals other people. It's what happens. That's how things work.
Yeah.
The Tanya says in chapter 27, unbelievable, he says, when you have the courage to confront one thought of dead energy, of fake, what he calls klipa energy, of sitra achra, that one thought that it takes you away from the frequency of oneness, of authenticity, of bliss, of God. One thought that you confront. And he says you create an explosion of divine infinity in all of the worlds.
Mhm.
Quoting the Zohar and Truma, one thought that you confronted creates a domino effect and a ripple effect of divine oneness permeating all the world, which means somebody may be living in another state, in another city, struggling with something, and that energy of holiness that you imparted to the world literally gives them the power to be able to penetrate through their veil of trauma.
Wow. Wow.
But obviously, on a basic level, I think we must talk about this. More than talking about it, we have to live it, breathe it,
Yeah.
really live it. I've learned that preaching, and it's maybe pathetic for me to say this because I'm a speaker and I make my living off speaking, but I've learned that the good old cliche of how cheap words are not a cliche.
Right.
All the preaching and the lectures in the world, as powerful, entertaining, engaging as they are almost worthless.
Mm.
If it's not embodied in our nervous system,
Yeah.
it's worthless. And I
Yeah.
don't speak theory. I know this from experience. I've been speaking, I'm not going to tell you how many years, but a lot of years. My first speech was as a 5-year-old at the dinner of my school, a school called the Holy Torah. And I remember this because I was invited a few weeks ago to speak at their dinner.
Mm.
And I was standing in the same room, and I started my speech. I said, the, one of the la- I gave a speech at this dinner of this institution. I think it was 1978, 1977. I think 1977, 1978. I was, I think, 5 years old, and I spoke in this room at this dinner. I pointed. I didn't know how many people in the room remembered that. I said there was maybe one person. My mother reminded me the details because she remembers it very clearly. Of course, a mother, Nachas, and. And I've been probably speaking since. I mean, not as a career. I haven't spoken as a career since 5, but I've given a lot of speeches in my life. And I've learned that all of them are worthless as long as they're not accompanied with the more important work. And the more important work is embodiment.
Mm.
Embodiment. Embodiment is in the nervous system. It's working through our emotions, working through our emotional responses, working through our triggers. Really, really healing, not being afraid of the pain, of the real pain, not having to go to disassociation, to numbing, to distracting, to emotional death, to emotional paralysis, to freeze. These are all normal reactions that we have cultivated very well in the long traumatic exile, and we survived. And credit is due to all of us who worked so hard to repress so many parts of our personality so that we can say, Am Yisrael Chai, and Am Yisrael will live forever, you know? One of the most moving things that I never understood as a child, and I'm only starting to understand it now more and more, not with my head, not with my brain, but with my body, with my nervous system, is I grew up at the feet of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And he had this line that he coined in 1980, I think it was. I was a kid, I was there. And he loved repeating it. And because he came from Ukraine, so he had a Russian Ukrainian accent. His mama Lashon was Yiddish, not English. He spoke English with a heavy accent. So it was very interesting that he coined this phrase in English. It was, we want Mashiach now.
Mm.
And they made it a song, you know, a very famous Chabad song. We want Mashiach now, we want Mashiach now, we want Mashiach now. And at all the children, at the Fabrengens, I remember at the end, the Rebbe was already, he was an 80-year-old man. This was a, yeah, 1980, 81, 82, yeah. He was turning 80 at the time. He was an old, and he would always turn to the children and ask them to start this song. And the Rebbe was so passionate about it. We want Mashiach now, we want Mashiach now, we want Mashiach now. And okay, I understood. He believes in Mashiach. He wants Mashiach. He prays for Mashiach. He wants Mashiach to come today, like we say in davening, you know, L'shuascha kivino kol hayam. I want him to come now. I don't want him to come tomorrow. But then I realized there's something so much deeper about that. It's like, what is he really saying? He's really saying we desperately need healing now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we want Mashiach now. We need healing now. Don't tell me Am Yisrael Chai another 3,000 years with our crazy trauma. Don't tell me we're the Jewish people, we're resilient and we survive and we thrive with all of our insanity. It's like, we are ill.
Mm.
Exile there's an illness.
Yeah.
There's an illness. There is a darkness that envelops us. And people did not understand what he was saying. They thought he was talking about the rebuilding of a third temple on a temple mount somewhere in some geographical location in the Middle East,
Right.
that some Messiah is going to do.
With
They did not realize what he was really talking about. What he was really talking about is, we are so stuck. And then he said it many times, but it was hard. But today I get it. It's like, we need redemption. We need real healing. We need liberation. And he would always say a line I also never understood. He says, you will never know that you're in darkness if you never experience your light. There's no way you
Mhm.
can know that you're in darkness. No way. If darkness is your vocabulary of daily life, you start calling it light.
Mm.
Wow.
Wow.
That's, I think, the biggest crisis. The biggest crisis is when I know that I'm ill, at least I have a name. I'm ill. Could
Right.
anybody heal me? The real effects of our collective and individual traumas, we call that health.
Right.
We call that sanity. We call it even religion. We have names for it. Religion, chinuch, kiddush Hashem. I love this idea that exposing sexual predators is a chilul Hashem. Great. It's a desecration of God's name to expose sexual. You know why? Because everybody's going to find out that we have sexual predators among us.
Right.
Interesting.
Right.
Sexually molesting and raping a kid, that's not a desecration of God's name.
Right.
That's not a problem because God doesn't notice it. God doesn't know it. The fact that everyone who was sexually molested has to live with such insane pain, and many of them have to leave religion and leave everything. That's not a desecration of God's name. Many of them are turned off from Yiddishkeit forever. That's not a desecration of God's name.
Right.
Exposing it and actually letting people say, wow, this is a healthy community. They're dealing with their criminals. They're talking about it. That's a desecration of God's name. I'm just giving one example of how you can use God and religion to cover up crimes against humanity.
Yeah.
That illness has seeped into many other areas of life.
Yeah.
And it's never about blaming anybody. We have my son, when he wants to make fun of me, my 14-year-old son, he's like, sometimes he sees I'm upset, he's like, Tati, you did the best you can with the tools you have. He's of course
My
making
5-year-old says the same thing
he's
to me.
making fun of his father. You did the best you can with the tools you have. It is very funny. We did the best we can with the tools we had. We had very, very limited tools.
Yeah.
And the Rebbe saying was like, you could bring redemption into your life. Open your eyes, right? So it's very, very powerful when you know that there is redemption, there is light, there is truth, there is healing, there is authenticity. And when you see that your life is miserable, when you see that your relationship is miserable, when you see that your marriage is not blissful, when you see that your Judaism is torturous, your Seder comes with a heavy heart, there's a dip of anxiety that lives in you, there's healing. These are symptoms of suffering that we're all going through. We are all, not all, but many, many of us are going through it. And the good news is that God has given our generation an enormous amount of gifts of healing.
Mm.
And the people that just make fun of these conversations, it's like, oh, what they talk about, trauma? There's people, they make fun of me. Sometimes in front of my face, it's fun. Oh, Rabbi YY, trauma. Rabbi YY equals trauma.
Mm.
Oh, you gave a share on trauma. Till you came around, Judaism wasn't about trauma. Now everything is trauma. Parshas Vayikra, trauma. Vayakal Pkude, trauma. How are you going to connect Parshas Pkude to trauma? What was the trauma? Oh, Moshe couldn't pick up the Mishkan. Trauma.
Mm.
Right? I have found that people who make fun of these types of conversations are usually hiding the deepest trauma that they're not ready to deal with.
Yeah.
And I'm not even saying as a judgment. You know why? Because I'm one of them.
Right.
I'm one of these people. So I'm not even judging. I get it. I completely get it.
Yeah.
I completely get it. And I know a lot of people, like there was somebody who told me, somebody once told me I was going to a big conference. And this person said to me, you should listen to your old speeches because they used to be good. They used to be good speeches. Your old speeches, your old rhetorics, your the theatrics, the message used to be very good. They didn't have to finish the end. Of course, the message was that today, you're just, you're bobble, it's pop psychology, liberal, spineless, emotional, stupidity. I get it. I really get it. I used to give speeches in a very different way. In a way, I worked harder on my speeches then, but it was much less me. It was much less authentic.
Yeah.
It was a nice presentation. It was a pretty good presentation. I mean, I don't want to completely defame myself. I always tried to be on some level authentic, but it was an inauthenticity that was subconscious, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Different type of inauthenticity.
Right.
It's an inauthenticity. You don't even know you're being inauthentic because you're not used to it.
Yeah.
Today, I'm usually disgusted by my own inauthenticity when I feel it. I don't always feel it, unfortunately, when I feel it. So I think for all of us, for me, for all of us included, it's like this work is blessed, blessed, blessed work. It's hard, it's painful, but there's nothing that is more rewarding than it, because the Tanya says, schar mitzvah mitzvah. The reward for the mitzvah is the mitzvah. The
Right.
reward for this work is the work. You're not going to get a lollipop, and maybe you're not going to get $100 billion, but you know what? There's something more priceless than that, something more precious than that. It's the work itself. It's the person that emerges as a result of this work. There's no replacing it.
Right. Wow. Yeah. That's exactly it. That's exactly it. Um, Rabbi Jacobson, thank you so much. I feel like I could talk to you for another hour. We could keep this going. There's so much to talk about, but thank you so much for making the time and for your willingness and your openness and your authenticity and working on yourself to be authentic so that we can all see it as a mirror to work on ourselves as well.
Thank you. That means a lot. And, the moment we realize that deep, deep down, we're just all channels and there's no real hierarchy,
Yeah.
there's really no hierarchy. We're just all channels, and each one of us has the privilege of channeling whatever God chooses us to channel through ourselves. That's the moment where we experience our deepest bliss and our deepest health, and we're not afraid of our darkness,
Yeah.
because our deepest darkness simply cannot stand up to our light. And that's my message. Everyone's struggling, and some of you may have watching this or hearing this, and you struggled with suicide, or just struggling with deep, deep, deep darkness. And we always think that, our darkness is worse than everybody else. And it makes sense, because there is something about your darkness that is darker than everyone else. And I'll tell you why. Because behind your darkness lay your light. And there's something about your light that is unique
Mm.
and is different than everybody else's light. And that's why you think that your darkness is also worse than everybody else. Because what you're really feeling is your unique, infinite light that God is channeling through you that nobody else has. So you don't know your light yet, so you think it's your darkness that's unique. It's your light that's unique, and your darkness is literally the shell that's hiding your light. It's like pearls that they discover in the stomach of an oyster, Where do they find pearls? The stomach of an oyster that comes because of an ulcer.
Right.
and when you open it up, there's like a pearl. Wow, our pearls are hiding behind our emotional ulcers and our
Mm.
emotional irritation. And that's why it feels so dark, because the light is incredibly powerful. So with all the love and empathy in the world, it's like, don't give up on yourself,
Mm.
because there's a lot of healing. Your soul is not a mistake. Your body is not a mistake. Like, God did not make, somebody once told me they were in a post office and there was this black African American woman who was always jolly and happy. Post offices are like one of those places where people get into bad moods. There's
Yeah.
long lines and nobody wants to be there. It's like, airports and post offices and, DMV offices and Social Security. It's these places where, it's not an amusement park or a cafe where you chose to go. You have to get a new license. So the post office, this fellow was telling me, he said, Rabbi, in Port Washington, he said, there was an African-American woman who was always happy and she made jokes and she was, so he once asked her, what's your secret? So she says she has a plaque on her desk, and she showed him the plaque, and she just looks at it whenever she gets into a bad mood. And the plaque reads, God made me, and God no make no junk. God made me, and God no make no junk. Now, the words are meaningless, but the energy of it,
Yeah.
like, God did not make a mistake when he created you.
Right.
And even if your house was dysfunctional, even things happened to you as a child, and things did happen to you as a child, and we need a lot of empathy. Just realize that when we say that your soul is a chelik elakami mal mamish, like the Tanya says, and every morning we say elakai neshama shenasat b'tahirihi,
Right.
your soul is sacred, it's light, it's perfect, it's real stuff. It's not a joke. Like, your soul is really a piece of God. God is indestructible, you're indestructible. And your body is sacred. The body was chosen by Hashem. It says in Zohar that the Gufa de Lohin Kadisha, the body is holy. We violate the whole Torah to save a body. The Rambam writes in the laws of ethics, Hilchas Deis, chapter 4, that Keeping your body healthy and wholesome is one of the ways of Hashem.
Right.
Midarke Hashemhu. The Tanya says that when we say God chose us, it actually doesn't mean the soul, it means the body. Because the soul didn't have to be chosen because it's in its own category. It's the guf that was chosen. So realize your nervous system is holy. Your neural pathways are holy. Your brain is holy. Your physical body is holy, not only your soul. And when your body is alerting you to pain, it knows what it's talking about. It's telling you a truth. It's asking you to intervene and embrace it and not run away from it and not repress it and not drink more or eat more.
Mm,
I had a huge binging problem
mm,
because I didn't drink, I didn't gamble, I didn't do other stuff, but I ate because eating is a very kosher addiction. I
right.
ate, I always ate. It was so interesting for me. I would finish a lecture, and within a half an hour, when I got back to my house or the hotel, I found myself eating uncontrollably.
Wow.
And I didn't know why. I ate supper. It was actually a very good dinner at the lecture,
Mm,
right? If it was a good lecture, if it was a bad lecture, I understood, but it was a good lecture. And I
mm,
didn't understand. If it's a bad lecture, I understand. I'm trying to fill the void because it didn't go well. I didn't get my standing ovation. But if it was a good lecture, I got a standing ovation. Everybody loved it. Why am I eating?
right.
And then I realized, I think I realized, I hope I realized, that really there was still a torturous feeling. The torturous feeling was there was a dissonance because I didn't embody what I was saying.
Mm,
So my soul and body were crying. They said, "You really rejected us for the validation of the audience."
wow.
And the binging was a good distraction from that pain because a chocolate Danish
Right.
does miracles in distracting you from pain, at least for 25 minutes. And then after 25 minutes, there's a second chocolate Danish.
Right.
And then there's a cinnamon Danish. And then there's always meatballs and spaghetti or another Chinese healthy dish. Anyway, my point here is that, I think we all, it's really a very deep trauma that we cannot feel our light. And the moment we start feeling it, it's a game changer.
Yeah. And that we shouldn't be afraid to feel it because sometimes we take that step forward into feeling our light and it's like, oh, this is too scary. I got to go
Yeah,
back to the
yeah, yeah,
darkness where
yeah,
it's
yeah,
safe.
yeah. My
Let
wife
me,
sent me a beautiful clip from somebody why so many people start to work and they quit in the middle.
yeah.
Because what happens is when you start to work, so the trauma floats to the top. The pain
Hmm.
floats to the top because it's waiting to be liberated. It wants to be embraced. It wants to be redeemed. And then, okay, so one thing floats to the top and you deal with it. And then another thing. And then the more you do the work, the more your body feels safe to bring things to the fore. Till then, it didn't feel safe. It had to bury everything. It was trapped. It was literally trapped in the cells.
Yeah.
Now it feels safe enough. And some of us get so scared. Oh my God, another demon, another demon, another demon, another. I'm done.
Yep.
And we detach. And this time the detachment has to be much worse
Right.
because we know much more. So we have to detach much worse.
Yeah.
So really, the path to healing travels through pain.
Yeah. The only way out is through.
The
You know,
only way out is through.
there's my children are 5, 19 months and 2 months, Baruch Hashem. So there's a lot of kids music being played in my house. And my daughter, my 5-year-old, has a song that she likes. We're going on a bear hunt, right? So they're going on a bear hunt and they get to the grass and you can't go over it. You can't go under. Oh no, we have to go through it. So they go through all these elements, right? Water, grass, mud, da da da. And that's life. You can't go over it. You can't go under it. You have to go through
Right.
it.
You have to go through it.
You have to, I mean, you
Yeah,
have to.
there's a therapist here in Muncie, a very good therapist. He once shared with me that somebody came to his office and she told him, or he told him, that, people tell me I just have to let go. I got to let go. I just got to let go of it. And he said, that's true. You have to let go. But in order to let go of something, you first have to hold it.
Sure. It's true.
If you
Right.
don't hold it, how do you let go? Hold
Right.
it and then let go.
I work with a lot of people who tell me that the second year of healing or the second year of sobriety or the second year of the work is harder than the first. Right? Because in the first year, okay, there things are coming to the surface, but in some way they feel a sense of invigoration, they want to change, they're motivated, something has shifted in their life where they say, okay, now I have to do it. And the second year, where it's like, okay, you're too far back, you're not in the beginning anymore where you can just close the door and say, never mind, right? But you're not, you're in the middle of the journey and it's messy. And that's usually sometimes when it gets harder for people because it's like, oh wait, what's it going to take for me to be healed? Period, end of sentence. I don't think that it works that
Yeah,
way.
it doesn't work that way. As
It
long as our souls are down here in this world, There are layers to still be peeled.
Yeah.
That's one of the most beautiful teachings of the Hasidic masters. This world is called the world of klipa. It's a world of husks, of shells, of cover ups.
Yeah.
Our souls don't have cover ups. Our souls come down here to peel away the layers, the fake news, and get to the essence. As long as we're still here, it means there's things to peel away.
Yeah.
So
Can
don't
I
get afraid. And it begins inside.
can I ask you a final question?
Sure.
What do you think practically people could do to start that avoda? Meaning outside, yes, okay, the traditional avenues in therapy and all of those things that we could recommend. If a person hasn't yet looked inward, what can they do to help create that sense of a safety for themselves to feel like, okay, this is something I can do?
It's a great, great question. For me, there was a great turning point. I was sitting in the office of a therapist, and I was having a conversation with him, and he asked a question, and I responded, and I guess he picked up on it. It was a very wise, he's a wise man and sensitive. He picked up on it, and he said, "You know, it's interesting that usually an answer like the one you just gave is a symptom of either complete apathy, indifference, or very deep anger. Which
Mm,
one is it? Which one is it? Are you angry?" And for the first time, I was forced to pause, look into my heart, literally and figuratively, and admit to myself, which was more important than to him, because he is just he's a therapist, to say to myself, I was angry.
mm,
I never admitted that to myself.
mm.
I wasn't allowed to be angry. Me, anger? You know, it says if you're angry, it's like you're worshiping idols.
Right.
I'm not angry. And also, moach shat lalev, I have a brain. My brain controls me. I'm well behaved. I try to be a gentleman. I'm not going to call myself soft spoken. I often scream in my speeches, but I usually control the way I communicate. I'm not angry. I'm not impulsive. I never admitted to myself that I have a deep, deep anger, which of course the anger was born from pain and the pain was born from loneliness. You know, there's layers and layers.
Right.
But that was a turning point in my own work to be able to admit, wow, I'm angry.
Mm,
And it wasn't easy. And I needed help from somebody because I didn't know I was angry. But then I had to ask myself, why are you so angry? And that proved to me actually that I'm in pain.
right.
And it also proved to me that something is causing that pain. And it began a very blessed journey. And I think one important step for all of us is to be able not to judge, but to be curious about what is coming up for you
Mm,
inside the inner recesses of your heart. Pause and be curious. This is not an opinion, it's not a judgment, it's not you're right or wrong, or maybe right or maybe wrong, but just open yourself up to the vocabulary which may be new in your life. Be curious about what just happened inside of you when this person said this to you, or didn't say this to you, or did this, or didn't say this.
mm,
And just look at it with curiosity,
mm.
without a judgment and without even a pure definition. Because if you'll do that, I believe that if you're an honest person, hopefully you're an honest person, and you want to become the best version of yourself, that's the beginning of a journey
Mm,
towards better and more authentic and deeper places.
mm, mm.
So before you run to the pantry to get the chocolate Danish,
Mhm.
or to warm up the frozen pizza, or to run to your class, or to run to shul, or to run blah, 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 all the good things you're doing, or check your email, or check your phone and watch another clip, even if it's a Rabbi YY clip, which I'm not going to protest. But before you run to watch that clip, pause just for 20 seconds and say, and what's the emotion that just came up?
Mm, mm. Profound. A very profound and sometimes challenging but necessary avoda.
Indeed.
Yeah. Rabbi Jacobson.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for your holy work to bring awareness and healing and love.
Thank you. Thanks for watching. To learn more about The Long Short Road, you can check us out on Instagram at The Long Short Road, visit our website, www.thelongshortroad.com, or email us, info@thelongshortroad.com. Thank you all for being here.